I'd been out of the office for exactly 5 business days. Monday through Friday, attending a client meeting in Chicago that had been scheduled for months. Important client, important presentation, important enough that everyone agreed I needed to be there in person. I'd left the previous Thursday with my office exactly as it always was. Desk organized, files in their proper places, whiteboard covered with project timelines, photos of my team on the shelf behind my desk. My name, Julia Nkosi, Director of Implementation, on the placard outside the door. I returned Monday morning at 8:35 a.m. to find my office had become a storage closet. Not metaphorically. Literally. The door was propped open. Cardboard boxes were stacked from floor to ceiling where my desk used to be. Filing cabinets I'd never seen blocked the window. Old computer equipment, printers, monitors, cables were piled in corners. My desk was gone. My chair was gone. My whiteboard had been removed from the wall. My nameplate was face down on top of a box labeled Archive, 2019. I stood in the doorway, staring, trying to process what I was looking at, wondering if I'd walked into the wrong room somehow, except no, this was definitely my office. Same location, same door number, just filled with junk. "Can I help you?" I turned. Mark Stevens, one of the facilities managers, was walking past with a dolly. "Mark, what happened to my office?" He looked confused. "Your office? This is storage now. We converted it last week. Where's my desk? My files? My equipment? Oh." His face changed as he realized the problem. "Nobody told you? Your stuff got moved to a workspace on the 3rd floor. Sandra from HR was supposed to email you. I've been in Chicago all week." "What workspace on the 3rd floor?" The open workspace area. Hot desking station." I stared at him. "You're telling me that while I was at a client site representing this company, my private office was turned into a storage room and my belongings were moved to a hot desking area without anyone notifying me? I just do what the work orders say. You'd have to talk to HR about the why." He hurried away before I could ask anything else. I pulled out my phone and checked my email. Nothing from Sandra. Nothing from my manager, Tom Brennan. Nothing from anyone explaining that my office was being repurposed and I was being relocated to a shared workspace. I walked to the 3rd floor. The hot desking area was a large open room with dozens of identical desks arranged in rows. The kind of space designed for contractors or temporary workers, not for directors with 7 years at the company. At one desk in the back corner I found my things. My laptop, my files, my desk photos, all crammed into a space about half the size of my previous office. No privacy, no door, no nameplate. Just desk number 37 in a sea of identical desks. "Julia!" I turned. My colleague Maria was walking over, looking uncomfortable. "I heard you were back. Did you see? My office is a storage closet." "Yes, I saw. Nobody told you?" "Nobody told me." She lowered her voice. "It happened Thursday. Facilities just showed up, cleaned out your office, and moved everything. We asked what was going on, but nobody would say anything. We thought maybe you'd requested the change. Why would I request to have my private office turned into storage and be moved to a hot desk? We didn't think you would. But they said it came from upper management, so we figured there must be some explanation." Who is in upper management? That's the weird part. Nobody seems to know. Tom wasn't in the office Thursday, and when we asked Sandra in HR, she said it was part of a space optimization initiative. I pulled up my phone and called Tom Brennan, my manager and the VP of Operations. It went to voicemail. I left a message. "Tom, I just got back from Chicago to find my office converted to storage and my desk moved to a hot desking area. Nobody notified me. Please call me immediately. Please call me immediately." Then I called Sandra in HR Core. Also voicemail. "Sandra, Julia, Nkosi. I need an explanation for why my office was eliminated while I was traveling. Call me back." I sat down at desk 37, looking at my belongings crammed into a space designed for temporary workers. Around me, people were glancing over, clearly aware something was wrong but not sure what to say. Before I tell you what happened next, I need you to understand something about this moment. This wasn't just about office space. This was about respect, about how the company viewed my role, about what message was being sent when they eliminated my private office without notification while I was representing them at a client site. If you've ever returned from travel to find your workspace changed without warning, if you've ever been quietly demoted through space optimization, if you've ever been treated like your position doesn't matter enough to warrant basic communication, stay with me. Because what nobody knew was that when they decided to turn my office into storage, they did it on a Monday morning when someone very important was scheduled to do an office walkthrough. My name is Julia Mkosi, and I've been the Director of Implementation at Meridian Solutions for 7 years. We're a software company, about 300 employees, providing project management and collaboration tools for enterprise clients. I led the implementation team, the people who actually got our software working for clients after the sales team closed deals. It's not the glamorous part of the Yawa business. Sales gets the commissions and recognition. Product development gets the innovation credit. But implementation is where promises become reality, where clients decide if our software actually works or if they're going to churn and trash our reputation. I was good at my job. Really good. 7 years of successful client rollouts, a team that trusted me, clients who specifically asked for me on their projects. My team's implementation success rate was 94%, compared to an industry average around 68%. When clients worked with my team, things got done right. For 7 years, I'd had a private office. Nothing fancy. A standard office with a desk, a door that closed, space for client meetings and confidential conversations. The kind of office that comes with being a director-level employee, managing a team and handling sensitive client information. Now that office was full of boxes, and I was sitting at a hot desk designed for temps. At 9:47 a.m., I got an email from Sandra in HRY. Julia, the third-floor workspace transition is part of our new flexible workplace initiative. Several offices are being converted to support collaborative spaces and storage needs. Your new workspace has all the technology and resources you need to do your job effectively. No apology for not notifying me. No acknowledgement that this was done while I was traveling. Just corporate speak about flexible workplace initiatives and collaborative spaces. I replied, Sandra, I'm a director managing a team of 12 and handling confidential client information. I need private space for client calls, team discussions, and sensitive work. A hot desk in an open area doesn't provide that. I'd like to discuss alternative arrangements. Her response came back within minutes. The workspace allocation decisions have been finalized. If you have concerns about your ability to perform your duties, please discuss with Tom. Tom, who still hadn't returned my call. I tried calling him again. Voicemail again. I sent an email. Tom, I need to speak with you urgently about the office situation. I've been reassigned to a hot desk without notification while I was traveling for company business. This isn't workable for my role. Please call. At 10:15 a.m., I was sitting at desk 37 trying to figure out what to do next when I heard a commotion near the elevators. Voices, movement, people straightening up at their desks. I looked up. Elizabeth Chen, our CEO, had just stepped off the elevator. She was with Marcus Webb, our CUO, and 2 other executives I recognized from company-wide meetings. They were clearly doing a walkthrough, the kind senior leadership does occasionally to stay connected with operations. They started on the opposite end of the 3rd floor, talking to employees, asking questions about workspaces and projects. Slowly making their way through the open floor plan. Heading toward my section. I watched them approach, my mind racing. Elizabeth Chen had founded this company 12 years ago. She was known for being detail-oriented, for caring about culture, for not tolerating disrespect toward employees. She was also intimidating as hell, and not someone you interrupted during official walkthroughs. But she was about to walk past desk 37, where a director was sitting at a temp workspace because her office had been turned into storage without notification. The walkthrough group reached my section. Elizabeth was asking questions about the hot desking system, nodding as someone from facilities explained the flexible workspace initiative. Then she paused, looking at the nameplate sitting on my desk, the one that had been face down on a box in my former office. I brought it down and set it on. Desk 37, not sure where else to put it. Julia Mkosi, Director of Implementation, Elizabeth read aloud. You're a director sitting at a hot desk? Every conversation in the area stopped. People were suddenly very interested in their computer screens, while clearly listening to every word. Yes, I said, standing up. As of this morning, apparently. As of this morning. What do you mean? I was traveling last week for the Castellan Industries implementation. I returned this morning to find my office had been converted to storage and my belongings moved here. Nobody notified me before making the change. Elizabeth's expression shifted from curious to very focused. Your office was converted to storage while you were at a client site? Without notification? Yes. Everything was moved Thursday. I found out when I arrived this morning and saw boxes where my desk used to be. Marcus Webb, the CO, stepped forward. Which office was yours? 4th floor, 412. The implementation director's office for the past 7 years. And you weren't informed about the change? No. I left Thursday morning for Chicago. Returned today to find everything moved. Elizabeth looked at Marcus. Something passed between them, a look that suggested this was news to them and not welcome news. Show me, Elizabeth said. We walked to the elevators, me, Elizabeth, Marcus, and the 2 other executives whose names I didn't catch. The entire 3rd floor watched us leave. People were pulling out phones, undoubtedly. Texting colleagues about whatever was happening. 4th floor, office 412. I pushed open the door that no longer had my nameplate. The storage closet that used to be my workspace. Elizabeth stepped inside, looking at the stacked boxes, the filing cabinets, the old equipment. She was silent for a long moment. This was your office, she said. It wasn't quite a question. Yes. Director's office. I've had it for 7 years. And someone decided to convert it to storage without consulting you or notifying you while you were representing us at a client site. That's correct. She turned to Marcus. Who authorized this? I don't know. This wasn't on any space planning documents I approved. Elizabeth pulled out her phone and made a call. Tom Brennan's office now. You too, Sandra from HR. Conference room, B, 15 minutes. She hung up and looked at me. Julia, you're coming too. Conference room B, 15 minutes later. Elizabeth at the head of the table. Marcus on her right. Me across from them. Tom Brennan, my manager, looking uncomfortable and confused at one end. Sandra from HR looking like she wished she was anywhere else at the other. Tom, Elizabeth started, her voice very calm and very controlled. Can you explain why your director's office was converted to storage without notification while she was traveling for a client meeting? Tom glanced at Sandra. I wasn't aware the change was happening. I was out. Thursday. I assumed it had been communicated properly. You assumed? So you knew the office was being converted? Sandra mentioned something about space optimization, but I didn't realize it was happening that week or that Julia hadn't been notified. Elizabeth turned to Sandra. Walk me through what happened. Sandra pulled out her tablet, pulling up emails. The request came through facilities last Tuesday. Office 412 needed to be repurposed for storage due to space constraints. The plan was to transition Julia to the 3rd floor collaborative workspace. Who requested it? The work order was submitted by. Sandra scrolled through her tablet. Tom Brennan. Every head in the room turned to Tommy Achiu. I didn't submit a work order, Tom said. I mentioned to facilities that we were tight on storage space, but I never said to convert Julia's office. The work order has your name on it, Sandra said, turning the tablet to show him. Tom stared at it. That's not my authorization. I never signed off on this. Someone must have put my name on the request without actually checking with me. Elizabeth's expression was very carefully neutral, so let me understand. Someone submitted a work order in Tom's name to convert a director's office to storage. Nobody verified the authorization. Nobody notified the director. The work was done while she was traveling, and she returned to find her workspace eliminated. Is that accurate? Nobody answered, which was enough. Sandra. Who processes work orders in facilities? Richard Palmer oversees space planning. Get Richard in here. Now. Sandra made a call. 5 minutes later, Richard Palmer, the facilities director, walked in looking confused about why he'd been summoned to a conference room with the CEO. Richard, Elizabeth said, explain the process for converting a director's office to storage. We receive a work order from the requesting department, verify it's been approved by appropriate management, and schedule the work. Standard space planning protocol. And for Julia Nkosi's office conversion, who approved the work order? Tom Brennan. It was in his name. Did you verify with Tom that he'd actually authorized it? Richard hesitated. The work order had his name and signature. We didn't call to double-check because it appeared properly authorized. Show me the work order. Richard pulled up the document on his phone and handed it to Elizabeth. She studied it, then passed it to Marcus. Tom, is this your signature? Tom looked at the document. No, that's not my signature. Someone forged it. The room went very quiet. Elizabeth set the phone down carefully. Someone forged a VP's signature to eliminate a director's office. Sandra, in your 7 years at this company, have you seen anything like this before? No. Marcus, you? Never. Elizabeth looked at me. Julia, I'm going to ask you a direct question. Is there anyone in this company who would benefit from eliminating your office? Anyone with a reason to want you marginalized or pushed out? I thought about the past few months. The small slights, the excluded meetings, the changed dynamics. And I thought about one person in particular. Derek Chen, I said. Your nephew. He was hired 3 months ago as senior implementation manager. He's been pushing for changes to how my department operates. Elizabeth's face didn't change, but something in her eyes did. What kind of changes? He wants to centralize implementation under his authority. He suggested multiple times that having a separate director of implementation creates unnecessary hierarchy. He's told people my position is redundant. Has he said this to you directly? No. But several people on my team have mentioned conversations they've had with him. Marcus, Derek's reporting structure. He reports to Tom in operations, but he's been involved in some strategic planning discussions about organizational efficiency. Elizabeth pulled out her phone. Derek Chen, conference room B immediately. She hung up and looked at me. Julia, I apologize that this happened. Regardless of what we discover about how or why, you should have been notified and consulted before any changes to your workspace. That didn't happen, and that's unacceptable. Thank you. Your office will be restored. In the meantime, you can use the executive conference room on the 5th floor as a temporary workspace. It has a door, privacy, and appropriate technology. 5 minutes later, Derek Chen walked into the conference room. He was in his late 20s, confident, wearing the kind of suit that suggested he thought he was more important than he was. He saw the assembled group and his confidence flickered slightly. Derek, Elizabeth said, did you submit a work order to convert Julia Nkosi's office to storage? No. Why would I do that? Did you sign Tom Brennan's name to a work order? Absolutely not. That would be forgery. Did you suggest to anyone that Julia's position should be eliminated, or that her office space could be better utilized? Derek hesitated just a moment too long. I may have mentioned in strategic discussions that we could optimize our space allocation. But that's just brainstorming efficiency. Improvements. Were those strategic discussions documented? They were informal conversations. With who? Various people. Richard from facilities, Sandra from HR, some others. Elizabeth looked at Richard. Did Derek suggest converting Julia's office to storage? Richard shifted uncomfortably. He mentioned that director-level offices were underutilized and that we could create more storage capacity if we consolidated some positions to shared workspaces. Did he specifically mention Julia's office? He said the implementation Julia's office? Our rector's office would be an ideal candidate because implementation work could be done from collaborative spaces. And you interpreted that as authorization to proceed? No. But when the work order came through with Tom's signature, I thought. Odd it was the formal go-ahead for what Derek had been discussing. Elizabeth turned back to Derek. So you suggested eliminating Julia's office, didn't authorize the work order, but somehow a work order with forged authorization happened to align exactly with your suggestions. Do I have that right? I didn't forget anything. I was just providing input on organizational efficiency. Did you know Julia was traveling when the office conversion happened? I might have known she was at the Castellan implementation. Did you think it was appropriate to eliminate someone's office while they were traveling for company business without notifying them? I didn't eliminate anything. I just made suggestions. Elizabeth was quiet for a long moment. Derek, you're suspended pending investigation. You'll be escorted out of the building. We'll contact you about next steps. after we review security footage and digital records. What? You can't suspend me for making suggestions. I'm suspending you for creating a situation that resulted in forged authorization documents and the elimination of a director's workspace. Whether you forged the documents yourself or convinced someone else to will determine. But you're suspended as of now. She nodded to Marcus, who made a call. 2 security officers arrived within minutes. After Derek was escorted out, Elizabeth looked at the remaining people in the room. Tom, work with facilities to restore Julia's office immediately. Sandra, review every work order processed in the past 6 months for authentication issues. Richard, implement a new protocol requiring verbal confirmation for any space changes affecting directors. Or above. Is everyone clear? They nodded. Julia, I'm sorry this happened. It shouldn't have. And it won't happen again. Thank you. Also, I'd like to schedule time with you this week to discuss your role and make sure you have what you need to do your job effectively. Does Thursday work? Yes. After everyone filed out, I sat alone in conference room B for a few minutes, processing what had just happened. I'd walked into work expecting to spend the day catching up after a week at a client site. Instead, I'd found my office converted to storage, confronted my CEO about it, and watched her suspend her own nephew. I walked back to the 3rd floor, to desk 37, where my things were still crammed into a temporary workspace. My phone was buzzing with messages from colleagues who'd witnessed parts of the morning's drama and wanted to know what was happening. I replied to a few, letting them know I was fine and that the situation was being addressed. Then I started working because client deliverables don't care about office politics. By end of day, my office on the 4th floor had been cleared of storage boxes. My desk was back. My whiteboard was remounted. My nameplate was back on the door. Facilities had worked straight through to restore everything. Tom stopped by around 5 p.m. Julia, I owe you an apology. I should have been more aware of what was happening with space planning. I should have questioned it when I heard about optimization initiatives. I didn't, and you paid the price. Do you think Derek forged your signature? I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe he convinced someone in facilities to process the request without proper authorization and just put my name on it. Either way, it was wrong. Why would he do it? Because he wants your job and he thought making you less visible was the first step in taking it. Over the next week, the investigation unfolded. Security footage showed Derek accessing the facility's office after hours on Tuesday. Digital records showed the work order had been created from a computer Derek had access to. The signature analysis confirmed it wasn't Tom's actual signature. Derek had forged the work order. He'd timed it for when I was traveling and Tom was out of office. He'd suggested the change to multiple people to create the impression of organizational consensus. And he'd assumed nobody would question it or that by the time I complained, it would be a done deal. He'd underestimated one thing: the CEO walking through that exact workspace on that exact morning. 2 weeks after the office incident, Derek's employment was terminated for forging authorization documents and attempting to undermine a director's position. The termination letter cited violations of company ethics policies and abusive position to damage a colleague's standing. 3 weeks. After the incident, I had my meeting with Elizabeth Chen. Julia, I wanted to follow up on what happened and make sure we're doing everything we can to support your role. The office restoration was appreciated. So was the investigation. I'm sorry my nephew was involved in this. He's family, but that doesn't excuse what he did. In fact, it makes it worse because he should have understood our values better than anyone. I appreciate you handling it objectively. I also wanted to discuss your role going forward. I reviewed your team's performance data. Your implementation success rate is significantly above industry standards. Your client satisfaction scores are excellent. And multiple clients have specifically requested you for their projects. That's the kind of performance we need to recognize and support better. Thank you. I'm creating a new position, VP of Implementation and Client Success. It would oversee implementation, onboarding, and ongoing client support. I'd like to offer you that position. I stared at her. You're promoting me? Yes. Your current role has been limited in scope. This would give you broader authority, a larger team, and appropriate recognition for the value you bring to the company. Interested? Very interesting. Good. We'll formalize the details this week. I also want you to know what happened with your office. That was a failure at multiple levels. Derek's actions, facilities' lack of verification, HR's inadequate process, Tom's insufficient oversight. We're addressing all of it. But most importantly, I want you to know that your contributions matter and your position should never have been vulnerable to that kind of undermining. 4 weeks after I found my office turned into storage, I was a VP with expanded responsibilities, a larger team, and a very clear message that the company valued my work. I also had a new office, larger than before, with a window that actually had a view, and a nameplate that said Julia Nkosi, VP of Implementation and Client Success. 6 months after the incident, I ran into Tom in the hallway. Julia, I wanted to tell you something. After Derek was terminated, I reviewed some of his communications. He'd been systematically trying to undermine you for months, suggesting to people that your position was redundant, that implementation could be handled more efficiently under different leadership, that your client relationships were exaggerated. I suspected some of that. What I didn't realize was how coordinated it was. He'd been building a case for eliminating your role and replacing you with himself. The office storage thing was just the most visible move. Why didn't it work? 2 reasons. First, your results speak for themselves. Multiple people pushed back on his suggestions because they knew your team's performance was excellent. Second, he got greedy. If he'd been patient, built relationships, proven himself first, he might eventually moved into a role with more authority. Instead, he tried to force it by eliminating your office, and that was visible enough that someone noticed. That someone being the CEO who happened to walk through on that exact morning. Right. Bad timing for Derek. Good timing for you. A year after finding my office converted to storage, I was presenting at a leadership conference about building high-performing implementation teams. During Q&A, someone asked about dealing with organizational politics and colleagues who try to undermine your position. Here's what I learned, I said. First, do excellent work. That's your foundation. No political maneuver works for long if you're clearly delivering results. Second, document things. When your office is converted to storage without notification, that's a data point. When colleagues report concerning conversations, that's a data point. Don't let problematic behavior go undocumented. Third, don't be afraid to escalate when something is wrong. I could have just accepted the hot desk and complained privately to colleagues. Instead, I addressed it directly with the CEO when the opportunity presented itself. Weren't you afraid of looking like a complainer? I was terrified. But I also knew that accepting the storage closet conversion without pushing back would signal that I was okay with being marginalized. Sometimes you have to choose between being comfortable and being respected. What would you have done if the CEO hadn't walked through that morning? I would have documented what happened, filed a formal complaint with HR, and if necessary, found another job where I wouldn't have to fight to keep basic professional respect. But I would have made sure the decision-makers knew what happened and why I was leaving. After the presentation, a younger woman approached me. Ms. Nkosi, I'm dealing with something similar at my company. A colleague has been trying to take credit for my work and push me out of projects. I'm scared that if I push back, I'll be seen as difficult. Here's my question. If you don't push back, what happens? He probably keeps taking credit. Maybe eventually takes my position. Right. So your choice is between being seen as difficult now or being marginalized later. Which is worse? Being marginalized, I guess. Then, push back. Document everything. Build your case. And if the opportunity presents itself to make the problem visible to people who can fix it, take that opportunity. Don't count on the CEO walking through at the right moment. I got lucky there. But do make sure that when problems happen, the right people know about them. 2 years after the storage closet incident, Meridian Solutions was acquired by a larger company for $340 million. As part of the acquisition, they specifically cited our industry-leading implementation and client success metrics as a key value driver. In the acquisition announcement, Elizabeth Chen mentioned me by name. Julia Nkosi has built an implementation organization that sets the standard for the industry. Her team's success, rate, and client satisfaction are major reasons why we're an attractive acquisition target. My office was never converted to storage again. If you've stayed with me through this entire story, I want you to understand something. This isn't about lucky timing or having the CEO walk through at the right moment. That helped, but it's not why things worked out. Things worked out because I'd spent 7 years building a track record of excellent work. Because when my office was eliminated, I didn't accept it quietly. I addressed it directly when the opportunity presented itself. Because I was willing to document what was happening and escalate when necessary. Derek thought he could push me out by making me less visible. He, oh, underestimated that visibility isn't about where your desk is. It's about the results you deliver and the relationships you build. If you've ever been quietly marginalized through space optimization or reorganization, if you've ever had someone try to eliminate your position by making you less visible, if you've ever had to choose between accepting disrespect and aching waves, remember this. Sometimes the CEO shows up at exactly the right moment. But more often, you have to make sure the right people know what's happening and trust that your work speaks for itself. If this resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe. Share your experiences in the comments about times you were marginalized or times you stood up for yourself. Those stories help others find courage. Remember, my office was turned into a storage closet. The CEO walked in behind me and saw everything. But the reason it mattered was that I'd built 7 years of excellent work that made the contrast obvious. Storage closets are for things that don't matter. I'd made sure I mattered.